Alrighty guys, hey, Frankie from RBT in Hawthorne. Today guys, we're just going to be going over a little bit of nutritional stuff, focusing on carbohydrates. Now the focus of today's video is basically going to be based around why carbs are important in our diet. So there tends to be this common trend in the fitness industry we see at the moment where carbs are victimized as the enemy, especially in fat loss programs where you need to have no carbs or low carb diets to lose weight. It's actually not true, and in fact in some cases can be quite detrimental to success. The reason why this trend is popularized is because the majority of people's carb intakes comes from what we call dirty sources of carbs or bad carbs. Now today's video we're not going to cover too much on the types of carbohydrates you can have, more just why carbs are good. So we're going to save that for another video. We'll talk about basically your better sources of carbs. We'll touch over it a little bit today though. Now with that in mind, the reason why we tend to see this happen is people go on these low carb diets and they actually get good results in the initial stages. They lose weight because basically they're depriving their body of a lot of their their nutritional intake, their calorie intake, so their body's got to get the calories from somewhere else. So that's why we tend to see in initial stages they deplete their muscles of glycogen. So glycogen is like a stored carbohydrate in the muscle. That glycogen stores get depleted because they're so low in carbs, so they lose weight on the scales very quickly. It's a false rating though. They're not actually burning as much fat as they think they are. They might look a little bit leaner as well because they're actually getting smaller because their muscles actually deplete. So if building muscle is one of your things, you don't want to go low on your carbs because you're going to deplete that. In fact, if you look at anyone who does carb cutting and then they load up on their carbohydrates, they puff up, their muscles blow up like blimps. It's one of the reasons bodybuilders in the stages before competition have that big carb hit to kind of pump their muscles up a little bit. Anyway, moving on. So the reason why carbs are important for burning fat is pretty much for that exact reason. So the way we like to think of it is basically the body's quite clever. If you take away anything from the body that it's used to, or rather if you take away energy from the body, it becomes aware of that very quickly and it's not wasteful. The body's built for efficiency. So if you're taking away too much of something, it's going to be like, well, hang on, anything that comes I'm going to hold on to. So there's two pieces here. If you take away a large amount of your carbohydrate consumption, your body's going to burn less fat at rest. It's going to slow your metabolic rate down. It's going to make it harder to burn fat. The flip side of that, the other piece of the pie, is that as soon as calories come into the body, you're going to grab onto it. They're going to hold it and they want to store it. So by having too low in terms of carbs in your diet, you make it easier for your body to store that fat. Okay, and anyone who's done really restricted diets, that sort of stuff, and then's had a bender, or they've fallen off the wagon, they've dived into a tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, you put on like 3 kilos just looking at the ice cream. So that's one of the reasons we don't want to do that, is we don't want to cut out carbs. Carbs are a really good way of getting energy in, keeping our insulin cortisol levels under balance. I'm not going to go too much into hormones today because I could talk for hours about that kind of stuff, but basically it's important to have our carb intake to get a healthy metabolic rate and also to prevent metabolic damage. Pretty much everyone I've worked with who's cut carbs out completely of their diet, unless they're really good with their nutrition, getting everything else in there, they end up with a little bit of metabolic damage. And what that means is pretty much what we've just already talked about, is that process of making it easier to store fat, harder to burn fat. And the other thing, guys, is that it's, leading into the second point, makes it so much harder to train. So improved performance. Now, the way we like to think about it, the way that they talk about it from a sports science level, is when we're burning nutrients for energy, burning fat is like burning wood, in the sense that it takes a lot of effort to get that fire going. Once it's going, it puts off a lot of heat, so it produces a lot of energy, but it's a lot of work to get it going. And burning protein for energy is like burning steel. It's really hard to get anything out of it. You can't really get much out of the way. Whereas burning carbs, the more simple, the closer it is to paper. So that's the way you want to think about it. So if I go to the gym and I have absolutely no glycogen stores, I'm really depleted of carbs, A, I'm going to feel like crap, I'm going to feel really depleted. But B, when it comes to moving those objects around, especially if it's like a Metcon Wednesday, you're going to feel like you're running through mud. It's a lot harder. So if you've ever done a really long bout of exercise and you have that feeling when you hit the wall, that term hitting the wall, that's where your majority of energy switches from being primary carbohydrate to primary fat. And that's when it becomes a really sluggish, and then suddenly the wood's burning and you're able to go. So my point being, just to sort of summarize, is that if we're not getting enough carbs in, we're not going to be able to train efficiently. So we're not getting the most of our training, therefore we're preventing up here as well, okay? So that's a really important thing to consider, is that we need our carbohydrate energy for training as well. It's really important. Anyone who's done an all protein and fat diet will tell you it's so hard to train. Talk to bodybuilders about their training in the last stages. They're so depleted of carbs, it's really tricky. And in terms of as well, kicking on to point 3, mental health, carbohydrates trigger release of serotonin. Serotonin is our happy hormone. So it's responsible for sort of feelings of joy and glee, and it's also been proven to sort of reduce the risk or the chances of depression and anxiety, okay? You'll see it a lot, guys. If you ever look at a bodybuilder in their sort of their stages just before competition, yeah, I mean the girls are crying all the time, the guys are flying off the handle all the time, because they're so depleted of this sort of stuff, and they really do battle with that. So it's one of those things. In fact, another way to look at it is, as soon as you're depressed and you're upset about something, the first thing your body does is it leads you towards chocolate and ice cream, because it's trying to get that sugar in to try and get that serotonin release. Okay, so the body's kind of subconsciously pushing you towards making yourself happier. That's why there's that link. It's one of those things. So just to sort of summarize there, guys, I mean, we need our carbohydrates first and foremost just to keep our metabolic sort of burning at a good rate, where we want it to be, the stage where it's able to burn fat. Number 1. Number 2, we need to build muscle. If you deplete the body of energy, especially carbs, it becomes, like we say, it switches over into that sort of efficiency model. Building muscle is not efficient, and the body doesn't want to do that. It wants to hold on to it. It'll only do it if it thinks you need to be bigger and stronger. So you need to give it that energy to kind of convince it that you're able to justify wasting that energy. Number 2, performance. Really simple one, guys. Get that glycogen stored in the muscle, having that sort of easy to burn, ready to go energy as well, especially if you're doing sort of cardiovascular activity, so your Metcon Wednesday sort of stuff, if you're doing lots of running in your boot camp or whatever sessions you're doing with us. And then mental health, just keeps you regular, guys. I guarantee you, like I say, you speak to anyone who's cut all their carbohydrates out, it messes with you. I've done it before, I've done months of no carbs. On the weekends, I go out and people don't want to talk to me because I'm so grumpy, so grumpy. So basically, guys, get your carbs in, just make sure we're getting the right type of carbs. We're eating a sweet potato, we're eating our organic oats, we're not having red cordial, we're not having fruit roll-ups, okay? So it's about understanding to stay away from the bad carbs and getting the good carbs. Alrighty, guys, thanks so much for your time. Eat carbs.